welcome to the second online Arsboni Legal Fest, and in particular on our present panel session, Modern Times Calling for New Lawyers. You can ask questions at any time during the panel discussion using your chat function or the Q&A function, and the questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. After our current discussion, we will continue with Aaron Murphy's presentation, Hunglish in the Boardroom. Join our event and hear what a native speaker could recommend for in-house counsels from when it comes to legal English. The Zoom link will be sent to the chat so you can drop off after this meeting. After this brief introduction, let's get into our present panel, the Modern Times Calling for New Lawyers. I'm so excited to introduce you Catherine Bamford, founder and CEO of BAM Legal, a legal technology consultancy firm helping to improve the quality of legal services by developing legal tech software. Andrea Miskolci, European Director of Innovation of Dentons, is also joining our session today, who can shed a light on how law firms choose their various legal tech providers. And last but not least, here's Gábor Pap, Head of Professional Development of DLA Piper Hungary, who is dealing with mentoring of lawyers at an international law firm. Many thanks for accepting our invitation. We're looking forward for the discussion here about the most recent legal tech topics. Let me briefly introduce today's topic for all of us who are joining us today, or even looking at the recording afterwards. The modern law practice and legal tech are generating new positions for legal professionals. However, the traditional working stream is still very dominant, at least here in Hungary or in the CE region. But there are more and more employees who are willing to work in new roles. Many of them start to think outside of the box and have the motivation to do something else. But what could be that something else? Probably something relating to IT. The disciplines of IT and law can be combined, and it isn't a presumption anymore. But what can the market exactly offer for these open-minded professionals? We would like to cover these topics in the following hour, and after which we will have a Q&A session. So please do write down your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat function. So how do panelists see looking at this technology and automation problem in the lawyer profession? What is the impact on the lawyers and the clients' satisfaction implementing new ways of technologies into the legal services itself? So you can answer in whatever role, so please go forward. And as we started, Catherine, if you could shed light on these things and questions.
Yeah, of course. So how is legal technology impacting the lawyers and the clients? I would say on the lawyer side, it's when technology is being rolled out successfully, it's making their lives easier. We all, regardless of what stage of our careers we're at or what profession we're in, we all know how frustrating it can be when our email doesn't work or we're trying to load something up and we can't get in. So we all have little things every day that, you know, technology, if it works and is done well, can help and do better and make our lives easier. So when there's things that they're doing in a really old, long way that suddenly can be done a lot easier, so all those admin tasks, it improves job satisfaction for the lawyers. Client satisfaction, maybe Andrea or Gábor would be better to answer this one. For me, I hear a lot of the time clients just want the job done and they don't care that much how you do it. So as long as you're delivering it in a quality way, what you're doing behind the scenes, they're not so interested in. But if you do it extremely well, obviously it can differentiate you. But their satisfaction, I think, as long as they get the result they want, I'm not sure if it impacts them that much.
I fully agree, Catherine, and I would just echo that. Sometimes I say at Dentons that, guys, clients don't care if you manage to hire Harry Potter or you use technology. They just want to have the first draft in like 2 hours. And there is also a famous study, and I think at one of the previous Legal Fest events, I've shared this study. It was done by the FT innovative lawyers award team, which said like the things that clients value are commercial, strategic approach, and turnaround speed, and project management, good processes. They don't mention technology, they don't mention innovation, they just want to see the results. And for the lawyers, I would say technology is an enabler and an accelerator of changes that have started even without technology, like clients demanding more, clients understanding more, and specifying what actually they want. They want it faster and so on. So basically, it's a perfect storm where from one point of view, the market has changed, and on the other hand, technology accelerates this change.
Well, let me start with creating my role. I often like to play the devil's advocate, and I will do the same here as well. So please forgive me if I tend to be a little bit bold and contradicting with some of my opinions. But I tend only to half way agree with Catherine. You said it's about the impact is about making our life easier as lawyers. I'm not sure if I feel my life became easier over the last couple of years with the new technological breakthroughs. I have an idea or an experience, I'm not sure yet which one, that our industry has a business scheme which is highly dependent on increasing our work, increasing the burden of our work on our fee earners. And no matter if you do this with tools from the 19th century or 21st century tools, there's a constant level of our workload. And I think, and this is my assumption, which might be debated, but my assumption is that no matter how tech savvy we are, this level of burden put on the shoulders of our lawyers will be more or less constant, and the measurement of the level of this burden is really much dependent on the individual factors, how much you can bear as a fee earner, and that relates very closely to the success or the speed of your career progress. And there might be individual differences between us fee earners, lawyers, who is a little bit more tech savvy than the others. So if you compare yourself to your competitors, either as a firm or as an individual, and you can get some competitive advantage of being a little bit better in adapting yourself to the new technologies, then you can get some advantage on the short run. But the others will follow, and they will catch up. And overall, from a big picture, the level of workload and burden on your shoulders, either as a firm or individual, will be quite constant. And that is why I don't think on the long run, technological progress will make our lives easier. But what I do believe, and that's the other half, which I'm very much in agreement with what Catherine has said, is that from the client's perspective, and in this sense, I very much agree with Andrea as well. Technology can be something that helps to increase client satisfaction. And at the same time, I agree as well that clients don't really care about the means we complete our works. They want the job done as professional as possible. But in this sense, this can be an advantage. And to close my line of thought, what I do believe about the impact of the technology on our profession is efficiency. So the impact of legal technology and any technological breakthroughs implied in our industry is increasing efficiency, increasing our numbers, and to put it in a simpler way, to enable us to complete more work at the same time compared to last year or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 100 years ago, and thereby help us to help more clients and earn more money with the same constant level of burden.
That is absolutely the way I can see, but there are also some clients who opt not using these softwares, or they rather say that we don't want some technology-based due diligence processes because you may export my data to the US, speaking of EU companies and clients. What would you say? How can you persuade those companies who might opt for some human work or might not want to use those tools or tech tools which are outside of the EU?
I think if a client has a problem with the data being on servers which has a connection to the US or are in the US, that's not a tech adoption problem. So I would rather go in that route. Like if I have such clients, then I rather look for a provider where the data is either encrypted and it's acceptable, or the servers are within the EU, or if there is still such a provider on premise. But I think that is not a question to persuade them, because that's either a regulatory prohibition or a risk that they don't want to take. I don't know what Gabor and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of where their data is being stored or used, that's just whether it's acceptable to them or not. And most of the legal technology providers out there will have US instances and instances that comply with EU data laws as well. If they want to sell to global law firms, they will have had to think about that, and that's normally covered. So I agree, it's not about necessarily persuading the client. And I think you'd mentioned about them having concerns and wanting like humans to do the work when we previously spoke, rather than technology doing the work. And I think with that, it's again not really about persuading them. It's just delivering the best legal, law is provision of a service. We quite often forget that because we're professionals. We forget that we are delivering a service, and as long as we do it fast and it's of quality, then it's good. So if they're using technology to do that, that's getting the same result, and there's still always humans at the moment involved. When we talk about legal technology, it's getting the lawyers maybe to a first point faster, but there's nothing being done by technology and then just being sent to the client really without human review first.
Well, this time I can't disagree with anything. So
come on, try.
No, I fully agree. I was just thinking whether I've met any client in my career so far who wanted me to deliver an email message in hard copy in my hands myself in person to that particular client, instead of sending that email message in an email to that client. That sounds ridiculous. Doesn't it? And that's the same with any kind of new technologies. The difference maybe is that certain technological elements we understand better, and there are some new or more complex ones we or our clients are not that familiar with, and that's why we tend to afraid perhaps from the technological solutions which we don't fully understand. But come on, this is the world of VUCA. We need to understand complex things, or let our inner wishes go to understand fully everything, because we can't. We just need to trust in the system, and clients need to trust in their legal service providers, and that is our job as trusted advisors, to act like trusted advisors and convince our clients that their matters, their cases are in good hands with us, and we will pick the best technology and which would enable us to provide them the best quality services. If that is the client relationship, then such questions don't really emerge. And if they do so, then I agree that with Andrea, that in most of the cases this is a regulatory kind of issue which we lawyers tend to feel most comfortable with, so that shouldn't be a problem. By the way, just to close with a challenging question: what is data? You mentioned, Peter, that clients might fear that their data will be outside the EU and they will not know where they are stored and in what circumstances. But what exactly is data? How do we define data in an average conversational level? Where is that thing we call data is actually really stored? We always picture, at least I always picture, a server somewhere in a, I don't know, basement of a big building with computers, and there are lots of data there, and that is our data, and we need to locate that data, whether it's in the EU or outside the EU. But come on, with the cloud technologies, data are everywhere. These are not centralized, stored things as we store money, for instance, or gold somewhere. So I'm not a data specialist, and I'm neither an IT specialist. But I tend to think that these are simplifications when we try to find the ways. We try to understand where data is stored, and that is the biggest trouble with the regulatory issues as well. That we try to regulate something, which is, well, I'm not sure if it's possible to regulate. I mean, data protection, data transfer, and so on and so forth, with the tools which the current legal thinking can provide us. But that's a different question. I admit, it's just interests me a lot.
Absolutely, it's quite a huge question after Shamsi judgment, but that leads to another conversation which we mightn't cover today's session. So you also mentioned, Gabor, that it is also really hard to find the best solution for the clients, the best software for the clients, the best technological tools for the clients. What do you see? How can a international law firm, and also invite Andrea to address this question, how can you find the best solutions for the clients, and from the market of a lot of good or not so good legal tech developers, providers? I know that BAM Legal is one of the best, but there might be some other marketplaces as well. So how can what are the main points you take a look at when you try to find the best solution on the market, and how you match these solutions with the clients? That would be the main question.
Would you like to start?
So shall I start?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, yeah, okay. So basically, I would say, before you start thinking about which legal, let's say, software provider you choose, you have to make sure you have found the right problems. You have prioritized your problems. These problems are strategic. If you solve them with technology, it will create value. So that's the first basically message I would say. Don't start with the startups. Don't start with jumping on hot providers. Don't start with your competitors' press release that they have bought something. Start with your own problems and prioritize them. And then the next thing would be to analyze what you actually need and the features. Basically, you create a features list. What is what I must have to solve this problem, and what are the nice to haves. And then after that, you do the screening. What I would then add is important in the practice is I always like if the provider has also a kind of a customer advisory service. So they help tailor make the software for me, or help analyzing the processes, and maybe even change the processes to make sure that the software delivers value. And then, of course, it's also important that they have a robust maintenance and support infrastructure at the end. I think this is anything, Gabor, that I missed?
I fully agree, and just a few things to add from the international point of view. Both Andrea and myself are coming from the big law. I think Dentons is currently the biggest international law firm when it comes to numbers of fee earners globally, and DLA is somewhere the second or third place right now, which means that we both have thousands of lawyers and maybe 10,000 of staff altogether all over the world, which means that we operate at Big Law an environment, an IT environment, which has many thousands of endpoints and users. Each of these users have several tools to access the systems. Laptop is just one thing, but we use our mobiles and different tools to access with different entry points to these international systems, IT systems. So this is really a robust IT architecture, and it's very, very difficult to add even a new application, even new software to these complex systems. So it's one thing when we find out that locally we would need some new IT solution, and our local office, let's say with some 100 staff, is ready for a new step in becoming more tech savvy, and we understand our problems. We have a good solution on the market. It's very rare that we would be successful in implementing that on a local basis. In the Big Law environment, and I think that's the same for big multinational companies, you can think big, but you will always start small when it comes to changing your systems. It works like a mothership, which is really difficult to steer from one direction to the other. And if you move the steering wheel, then your whole systems will turn. I just have one very sad example to highlight this. A few years back, like I think it was 5 years now, there was a huge IT crisis at DLA Piper, and a lot of multinational companies as well, but I was here already. And on one, it was a Thursday morning, Friday morning, we opened up our computers, and suddenly there was a black screen appearing in my computer, demanding some, I don't know, 10 bitcoins to get my control back to my computer. And literally, it was really like in a movie scene. I was sitting in an open space, and I see that blackened screen in front of me, and then my colleague arrived, and her screen got black as well, and all the screens, all the computers got frozen in the entire office. And then we started to receive phone calls from other offices that they have the same, and almost the entire global operation was affected by this IT crisis because of a malware software which was successful to go through our systems because of one of the Eastern European locations just installed a new government specific software which was needed for I don't know, company registration. So a government issued software which normally should have been trusted, and still it could cause so much trouble in our systems. So that is why implementing IT solutions and picking new service providers is always a big procurement task. And if you want to be successful, it's usually done, the procurement in a centralized way. The impulse can come from the local entities, but it's generally a decision approved or made at the central levels of the big law firms. And there's another aspect, and this is the thing I might not be in fully agreement with Andrea. Never go with startups, because I think that could be something a way out or make this difficult situation a little bit easier. And I have another example for that as well. But we didn't go with startups, but we became a startup over the last year locally here. We decided to develop a new platform, a new IT platform, which is now available on mobile applications as well, and on computers as well, in order to share some of our knowledge with the Hungarian legal society, or fellow lawyers, and to provide these bar association credit points to some other lawyers than our fee earners. And we acted as a startup and built our own platform. It's called Develop, and that could be a success story if you do it small and do it on your own, because then you can adopt it to all the IT requirements which we face in our IT architecture.
Just a correction, I'm not saying you shouldn't, or big law or any small law, medium law, shouldn't start with startups. I'm saying don't start with the provider. Don't start with the solution and then, oh, that's so sexy. Let's try to find a problem for it. Start with the, so we also work with startups, we also invested, so it's just some
yes, in this sense, I fully agree that we have to be cautious sailing with the new winds and think that what seems to be sexy would be a solution for us as well. I'm fully in agreement with you in that respect.
Thank you. Looking at from the other aspect, Catherine, what do you see? How can you tailor your software for the law firms? How can you provide a tailor-made solution for let's say DLA Piper or Dentons if they knock at your door? What can you do there? And please also give us some practical examples. How could you prepare or tailor a software which was specifically made for one or two clients of yours? You're muted, Catherine. Sorry for that. Yeah.
One of us had to do it. Yeah, sure. So just to clarify, so I help law firms and in-house legal departments, and BAM Legal helps them to choose, procure, implement, and roll out technology. So we don't build products. We help them take products that are for sale and use them and build things within them. So the technology providers themselves, going to the points that have just been made, they won't get through. I've worked with both DLA and Dentons and 100 other law firms, and they can get far down the line by impressing people and doing demos with lawyers, and you have two partners in one office go, we want that, and they'll go to someone like Andrea and go, we want to buy this, we must. If they get to the point where it gets the IT security questions sent out by procurement, if they can't tick those boxes, it's kind of forget it. So the advice to the product companies is have that all done up front. And I really liked what you said, Andrea, as well about you like companies, technology companies that provide that customer service bit as well. I think that's probably a big differentiator between the legal technology companies that do very well and the ones that don't. The ones that don't go, here, pilot our software, and then just leave you alone for 2 months. The ones that come and go, here's the journey, we'll check in on you, we suggest you try it in this department, maybe do a bit of this and help you and give you a bit of that project management to help you implement it, they will do better. In terms of specific examples that people in the audience might be interested in of things that have been built, it's kind of world is your oyster, so it's like almost choose a legal department and then you talk about a legal technology solution. One that I quite like, it came out a couple of years ago, that's a nice example to talk about, is the one where working for, so it's intellectual property law, and it's looking for copyright infringement, intellectual property infringements. So the example being, and this has been talked about publicly, you can go and look it up, the example being, for example, Dr. Martin boots. The yellow thread is exactly, so it's not, this isn't the same as like fakes, so selling fakes of a boot. It's how do you go even further and use technology to recognize protected characteristics and infringements of protected characteristics. And the example I like is where it scans the internet and looks for not just the boot, but then the where they have, so protected characteristic of a DM boot is the color and width of the thread with the exact spacing that's applied. And you can now use, you can scrape everything, all the pictures on the internet, look at that and try and identify and then report back to your clients. So there's a company that's done that. There's a law firm that's done that for lots of different top brands and looked at their particular protected characteristics. That's a legal tech solution that I've liked recently. What's another example from another department? As you know, both DLA and Dentons are doing a lot of work around corporate and due diligence and how their lawyers do large corporate transactions, and a lot of technology going in, lots of different types of technology going into every stage of those processes and how they do those.
Thank you much. We take a look at the whole thing from the technological perspective, but our today's session is also aiming towards the lawyers themselves. I mean, the persons behind or who are working with these technologies. There are a lot of fears. I can read and hear in a lot of podcasts, a lot of fears about using technologies, using AI. There are a lot of examples and articles about the presumption, which I assume is not quite true, that AI and these technologies may lead to a loss of jobs or some legal jobs may be in or made distinction after a couple of years. But what do you see? Let's turn this question around. How can AI and technology help these people? How can we make a better product? How can we be better with AI and not fearing of losing our jobs as lawyers? What do you think about that?
Can I maybe start just by something I hear a lot when I speak to a lot of students, and I read things in the press and the industry about this, is a lot of people aren't actually fully aware of what's currently being used within law firms when we refer to AI. So at the moment, there's not much more happening in the top 100 law firms in the world. And this is still pretty amazing, like it's saving hours and hours and hours and hours. But at the moment, the tools out there are being used to help look through thousands of documents and extract clauses or pieces of information. Even higher level than that, sometimes what it's doing is just organizing the documents into categories of documents. So, okay, here's all the employment contracts, here's all the real estate agreements, here's all the commercial documents. Then it might go, here's all the commercial documents with a value over 100,000 because they're the only ones you care about for that corporate deal. Then it might go further and go, okay, all of these commercial agreements, which ones have a change of control clause and which ones don't, because that's what the lawyers and the client cares about. So at the moment, when we're talking about law firms using artificial intelligence, the majority of what we're talking about is that it's search and pattern recognition and extract, and it's trained. It's, we're using trained machine learning here. We're not using stuff where it's going off and learning by itself. So it's not, the definitions are really widely kind of used. So at the moment, I think the press is maybe making it seem that there's a lot more happening than it is. But I'll pass over to Andrea and Gabor to talk about that. But I think it's just really clear that important that everyone has a bit of a reality on that.
I think there was a very popular image in the last few years, a robot sitting at a desk, and then the robot lawyers are coming, right? It was a very, very popular. I think there is a huge hype, and you just described brilliantly what is the reality. But also, I think it's completely normal that people are afraid or having doubts. Every single technological change, whether you go back to the beginnings of the 20th century or when the internet came, people were afraid that these changes will take away jobs. The reality is rather that it creates such changes create jobs, but also, of course, they change existing ones. On the other hand, I don't want to say that we just lean back and say, okay, everything will be fine, or we just say just live with it, it's natural, survive. What we do at Dentons is that we build a bridge between legal and tech. We call them legal engineers, and I think Catherine has a big role in creating that term a few years ago. Some other law firms call them legal technologists. In some law firms, the practice development lawyers fulfill this role. So basically what we build is a team of former lawyers who really understand the processes and also skilled in technology. They are not developers, they don't have IT, real qualification, but they have very good tech affinity, and they help to cross this bridge, between legal and tech. They help lawyers to find the right technology, to apply it. Also, they help to go step by step. Like let's look at this sandbox, just test it. Okay, next level. If you are happy, let's go to the next level. You use it for your internal processes with your team. If you are happy, we go to the next level. We invite also the client to collaborate or have a direct access. So I think you can mitigate this fear with things like that. And also you can mitigate the fear with concentrating on the basics and starting from basics and not talking too much about the hard themes.
Thank you. Again, agree with everything, and especially liked Catherine's summary on what's happening on the market. I myself am neither fond of hyping legal technology as it is right now, because I think real legal technological breakthrough will happen when we will arrive to the world of automated execution. I think that's the key for law. When we will be able to create contracts which automatically execute themselves, and that there are some promises, especially coming from the cryptocurrency background and the distributed ledger technologies, just to mention the Ethereum platform, which offers some kind of solution for these automated execution procedures. But until that, we are really using technology for making the human legal work more efficient, more organized, and probably letting our fee earners to concentrate on the real legal work and not on printing documents and then sorting them to different binders and sorting them again and going through endless contracts with no-brainer tasks such as finding a particular clause there. So that's, I agree, the current situation right now. What I think will remain with the lawyers, even the human lawyers, even when robotic lawyers arrive and claim our seats, is that it will be the risk analysis. I can't see any technology right now, or even the promise of the technology, which would be able to assess specific risks, and once it's assessed, to offer solutions to mitigate that risk on a tailor-made basis, and on top of all that, to negotiate the mitigation of such risks with an adversary party and to come to an agreement. Certain things can be automated, I think, even in this process. But currently, I might be old-fashioned, but I think the human element of this risk-taking assessment and negotiation is something that we will very much stick to even in the coming decades. But who knows?
I would say yes and no. I think if you look at the risk industry, it's very heavily reliant on. So what is the risk that that market's going to collapse next year? What's the risk that there's going to be an earthquake here? That's very much data driven. So I think there will still be humans managing vast amounts of data that will highlight risk. But I actually think risk is an exciting area for technologists to get into.
Yeah, but is there a technology or the promise of a technology deciding how much risk you can take?
Yeah, and that will come from, well, no, but that's maybe the discussion with the client. So it's and that's where you can get to then mitigating the risk by automation, by saying, well, if you want this to be 100%, then we need to move this. And it's where you choose your risk profile and it changes other clauses. So, okay, we'll give you this insurance cap, but your liability is going to go up. It's kind of as one clause changes, another one goes. So I don't know. I just personally, the negotiation and risk space is what take up a lot of my thought processes at the moment.
Yeah,
so
I can see this vision, and I can imagine a far future when the algorithms will play the deal as we play with against the computer in the chess game, and in the end there will be just an approval from the human side. Could be, but I think it's not here yet.
For the people listening though, in terms of the jobs, you know, there is still the need for lawyer. You know, your point earlier, Gabor, about that even though technology makes the tasks that you're carrying out more efficient, you're still doing as many hours, if not more hours, and the demand on lawyers and the pressure on lawyers is staying the same. So I don't think the lawyers are going anywhere. It's just that you're getting, you know, kind of more work. But for people entering the profession, I would say some areas of law are going to be automated. The process is automated a lot faster than the others. So I would recommend you think about what are the new areas of law that's coming through. So fintech, crypto, you know, why not be a lawyer that knows everything about that? Space travel, there's not really any, you know, soon we're going to need to understand how to get a travel insurance policy for flying to the moon. You know, so be one of those people, think about intellectual property, technology law, maybe not the stuff that at the moment, you know, real estate law, very, very transactional. 10 years time, 20 years time in your career, that is going to be very much process driven. So I would look to the future and try and find an interest in an area of law there, rather than thinking you'll be working for the next 40, 50 years in real estate. I was an ex-real estate lawyer, by the way, so I'm not to any real estate lawyers out there, I'm sorry.
I would also add that maybe it's worth to think about to be not only a lawyer, but having something beyond law. And if you ask, okay, what? I usually refer to data, design, diversity as keywords. And data, if you are a lawyer who is tech affine and can think in data, you don't have to code. I don't believe in the future lawyers will have to code. It doesn't harm, but already if you understand data in your processes or in the processes that have. So data can be something which kind of a metaphor for one direction. Design, I use that for client experience, designing the experience. The human element will be more important. So that could be a specialization beyond law or a strength beyond law. And the third one, diversity, in that sense that in addition to law, having an additional skill. So not diversity in the classic sense, but having a sector specialization, having an additional degree, having a mediator, whatever qualification. So something beyond law helps, I think, in the future. And already today, but maybe in the future even more.
How do you think?
I subscribe. Sorry, I subscribe to this future very much. So coming to almost the end of this panel, I think for me so far the conclusion is that I can really subscribe to a future where legal technology helps us to take away the work which is boring or which can be automated, and thereby create some space for us lawyers to increase the human element. So instead of taking more job on the data side, to release us from the data processing, leave that to legal technologists or legal specialists, whoever, legal engineers, however we call them, and lawyers who are not willing to code should spend more time or could spend more time on the human elements, the psychology or the design, as you framed it very well, Andrea, and to create the client journeys and the client experience to make it better. And one thing to react to Catherine as well, you can all be sure listening to this session that whatever you do as a lawyer right now will be commodity work in 5 years or 10 years, no matter how niche work you're doing. So I can just echo what Andrea and Catherine has said, that if you want to be future-proof in your career, then you should look 10, 15 years into the future and try to pick something which will exist at that time, and not subscribe only to legal fields which the current professionals are doing.
It would be the great last word of this presentation or this panel. But before we do so, and before we move on to the Q&A session, just as a final question, I was really interested. What tips or tricks would you recommend for lawyers individually? What should they be aware of, or what should they do to accelerate the switch to new technologies and to be ready for those technologies, to use them? Exactly. I'm looking at Gabor, for example, who is a head of a mentoring program at the LA Piper, for example. But I would like to hear all of your thoughts on them. What would be your suggestion for these professionals?
Well, I started very quickly. My only advice is to look at technology and especially legal technology as a means and not the goals. So don't mix the two. Don't be fooled by hypes very much around us everywhere. Know your limitations as an individual, how much tech savvy you are, and don't try to pretend you're more tech savvy than you are. Use technology when it can provide a real solution to your challenges, and forget about it if it just makes your life more complicated.
And then I don't know, Catherine, what is your thoughts on this one? What would be what would you say to take as a takeaway for the lawyers individually?
Yeah, so if you're already at a firm, if you've already started practice, I would recommend for maybe a week, every day, taking 10 minutes at the end of the day to think, what did I do today that was a waste of my time? And just by recording that, you start to see patterns and you think there must be a better way. And that's when then you should get in touch with your legal engineering team. If you're in a large firm, if you're not, think about it yourself and think, what do I use in my day-to-day life? You know, it can be something as simple as, we talk about legal tech and we think about these big AI tools, but it could be something as simple as, it took me forever to organize a meeting with 10 people because I had to check 10 calendars. In my personal life, when I'm organizing a party with my friend, I use that app Calendly, or I use da-da-da. It's thinking about things like that and thinking about what you're doing as a lawyer every day, what was a waste of my time. And that's a really good way to like come up with new ideas and talk to your team about, could we try something to speed that bit up? It will stand you out if you are someone that volunteers to work with the legal engineering team, testing new things, piloting new things. Obviously, you're very busy and it's hard to find the time, but if you're interested, your offer of help to trial and pilot things will be welcome, and to be an advocate for the legal engineering teams to implement things throughout. If you're not yet in, I'd recommend, there's lots out there. There's if you're on Instagram, just search the hashtag legal tech, same on Twitter. There's loads of podcasts. Legal Tech Live's a brilliant one. And there's lots of societies out there. If your university doesn't have one already, you can set one up, or there's groups called like Legal Hackers in pretty much every city of the world.
I would maybe just, so completely agree, I would add that don't be afraid to start with basics. As Catherine's examples mentioned, don't think like if you don't start with AI, you are not innovative or you are not fancy, but basics can do real magic, can bring value. And actually a few years ago, 2 years ago or something like this, there was even a kind of a movement, at least on online, hashtag bring back boring was a reference to that. After the AI hype, let's go back to the basics and bring back boring, like automating documents, automating processes, looking at those solutions that can organize meetings and so on. Don't be afraid of boring. Actually, it's not so boring in real life. No.
Thank you much for the panelists for this great discussion. It was really a lot of things to take away, but we've got also a Q&A session, and I call for the viewers to ask their questions if they did not do so. We've got one question though, which I will ask in a minute, but you have still the ability to ask a question within this time when I will read this one. So just let me quote. what do universities have as a role in legal tech? What should universities do to help accelerate these processes?
I think universities should make sure that lawyers understand their own processes, because that's the basic to start with technology. I don't think universities have to go in detail of the service providers. They can introduce, or they should probably introduce courses which talk about the major areas like document automation, process automation, transaction management platforms, technology-assisted document review, this kind of AI tools, or usually referred to as AI tools. So they can provide, or should provide, an overview. But on the other hand, understanding the processes is the starting point to use technology, I think.
I agree, and would even go a little bit further. I think it's critical to understand the legal processes and the processes behind each of the laws, rather than learning the contents by heart. And I would add just one simple thing that universities could do, and it would be magic. Teach law in the style of if and then, as the basics of coding, because that would bring our mind to this procedural thinking, always thinking causes and effects. What happens if I do this? What will be the result? And that would help very much to transform then later on whatever matters the lawyer will face to this simple logic, and yes, that can be more complex later on, and that would help us to teach also the digital literacy, because that's still something which is missing even from I think the best law firms, at least in Hungary. It's one thing to understand how to search for laws in the basic legal databases, but that's not digital literacy. Universities could do a lot better than that, and maybe experiment with new legal tech solutions. I mean, if big law is afraid of bringing in startuppers or new solutions, because we need to wait until a new service provider has proven something on the market, universities could do experiments. They could create small teams, labs, invite these new solutions, new service providers, even help them as an incubator to create new solutions, to understand the market better, so that young lawyers would come with an understanding of what's happening around, and also with a great hunger to reform their workplaces where they arrive. And that pressure coming from the young lawyers is very much missing, I think, from big law, to help us sitting in these human chairs for longer, not to stick to our human chairs, and a little bit give space for robotic lawyers, because that would be good for us as well. And we need this new generation of lawyers coming in and explaining us why new solutions would be good, and which service providers or which solutions we can trust.
Also, maybe it would be good if they would use technology heavily, right? I don't know, I'm too old to comment whether, definitely in my old days, there was no technology used, or hardly any. But if they use technology during those years, and people get used to uploading documents to platforms instead of emailing them back and forth, that is already awesome. That would be a big help.
Right. We've got a couple of new questions, but our time is very limited because a new panel will start shortly. I would say that as we've got only 4 minutes left, we will answer these new questions afterwards in writing, and we would leave the floor to the other panel starting, or not panel, other presentation starting in just 2 minutes. We will have the technical information inserted into the chat box. And I have to say, really thank you for the discussion, Catherine, Andrea, and Gabor. It was really, really interesting. And I think a lot of us can have a lot of takeaways from today's panel. And as always, stay safe, and I hope we'll have a similar discussion in the near future in person as well, if that's possible. So thank you much, and for all others, please check out from this event, and then I'll go out for the next presentation of Aaron Murphy about Hunglish in the boardroom. So thank you much again, and have a nice evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.